Hi.
Toya?
Okay. Well, I see some people I know.
Hi, Karen. Hi, I'm Ethel. I'm going to be introducing you today.
Okay.
I know you've mainly been in touch with, I think Barbara Gay or Stewart or somebody.
Right.
They've kind of helped us out with this one, and I know you were all set up for April, and we had to postpone that. So
Right.
thank you for being flexible.
That's fine. And I think that Noah's going to go first.
Yeah.
The only thing I'm a little concerned about was I got a video I want to show, and I feel just a little uncomfortable. It went fine on Sierra Club this week, but sometimes I struggle with that a bit. So I had sent it, I think, to was it Tracy?
Tracy, yeah.
Yeah.
She's the LWV Tennessee down here. Should be Tracy, so.
Okay. So I sent it to her at the link and asked if maybe she might want to show the video for me, but I don't know if that's possible or not. I know that things have changed since last night.
I just lost you.
I just heard the turtles on the porch. Hang on. Do you have your camera?
I just take a picture of me and send it to you.
Well, not now, but yes, I do want to. Yes, thank you. We have a box turtle in our backyard, and I need to figure out if he's a boy or a girl. Can you pick him up and turn him over and see if he's a boy or a girl? Oh, honey, it won't hurt anything. Just be careful he doesn't peek on you. Well, yeah, just bring him over here and turn him over so I can see him. Oh, he's a boy turtle. Okay. Okay, so we got a boy turtle. I'm going to order him a mate. You know, I didn't realize that box turtles were endangered.
Okay. Thank you. That was somebody I thought maybe I needed to hear from.
Okay.
So you found your turtle?
Yeah, and he's a boy, so I got to order a girl turtle so we can have a turtle family.
Great. Yeah, we decided today was a perfect day to have kind of a like different kind of topic than we've been having, to, you know, focus on the future and the environment, and
Hi, Noah.
Hi, how's it going?
I think it's going okay.
Yeah.
I'll feel better after this is over.
Okay. Yeah.
I know. I'm Ethel, and I'm going to be introducing you.
Oh, cool.
I know you've been in communication, I think, with probably several other people, Tracy and Stewart and Barbara.
Yeah, cool. Thanks. Yeah. Yep.
And Barbara Futter.
Yeah.
Hi. Hi.
Hey, Barbara.
How you doing? How you doing, Ethel?
Doing okay.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Stuart said he had to go take his mother to the doctor, so he wouldn't be watching this one. He'll watch the repeat next week.
Okay.
I was just texting him. It is going to be recorded though, right? So we can.
Right.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah, he'll be able to watch it, I believe, on the Lake website if he,
Yeah.
at some point in a few days.
Hey, Maureen.
Laura,
How you doing?
all right, where are you?
I'm actually in New York this week helping my sister move.
Okay.
And anyway, but I'll be back in Nashville next week. So
Okay.
I went to a great presentation last week, so I'm going to give you a call about that, about cleansing records. And there are 2 lawyers in 2 different legal aid offices that do that work. So I want to connect that with you. So I'll give you a call next, or set up a time to talk to you.
Expungement, you mean?
Expungement, that's right.
Yeah. Yeah. These days when you say cleaning things, everybody thinks of disinfection.
You're right. Absolutely right. Okay. Put myself on mute. Good to see and talk to people.
Let's see. And I guess, wait, who's hosting this right now?
Actually, well, I'm going to introduce you, but we're waiting on, there's Madeline. Madeline
Tracy?
Garr is our president, and she'll get us started,
Right. But
I guess
so
right at 12.
Is Tracy coming on, or because someone was going to make me a
She's
host.
the LWV of Tennessee down there. That's Tracy, I think.
Oh, okay. Okay. So I guess, cool. Yeah. I guess I need to be a host to do I forget what I was going to do. Oh yeah. I was going to do the breakout rooms at the beginning.
Okay. Yeah, we're kind of low tech sometimes, so.
That's all right. I've only done it once before, so. Let's see.
Climate change, undoubtedly.
And they're on early. Okay. Okay. Hey, Noah.
Hi. So yeah, I guess.
Karen.
Looks like I'm still, yeah, I'm just trying to figure out, oops.
Hi,
Hi.
how are you, Tina?
I'm okay. How are you?
Oh, I'm good.
Good. Good. Good.
Meds are good.
Happy pills? Good.
Madeline, I guess I have 12 o'clock. Do you want to start?
Sure, yeah, and people can join as they come. Yes, my name is Madeline Garr, and I'm the president of the League of Women Voters. And I want to welcome all of you to another one of our fabulous hot topics. Next month, our hot topic will be around affordable housing, a perspective locally. So it looks to be very interesting too. So you want to mark your calendars for October 2nd. But before we go any further, I'd like us to take a minute and remember the people who died in 2001 at the attacks during 9/11. I would like us to take a minute also to think of all the people and the families of the people who have died since in relation to their work in rescue in 9/11. Just a few seconds to remember them. Okay, so I want to also tell everyone that is here, whether you're a member or not, if you are a member, we are grateful for you. If you would like to volunteer with us, there's a lot going on and we need you. Our board is mighty, but not that numerous, and we cannot do it all. So we are really looking for volunteers to help us. If you are not a member, first of all, the League of Women Voters is open to men and women, not just women. And we would love for you to become a member as well. And so you can do that by going to our website, and you will see this big word called join, and it will tell you exactly how to do it. So again, thank you for coming, and I'll turn it back over to Ethel.
Thank you, Madeline. I guess if everybody could put their screens on mute, I guess make sure we don't get a lot of background, that would probably be helpful. Also, if you want to pose questions, you can use the chat box down at the bottom and enter those in, and we'll get to those at the end. Today our topic is strengthening conservation in Nashville. And I'd like to especially thank our environment chairs, Barbara Gay and Rosanne Bucci-Fautre, as well as Stuart Clifton and Barbara Futter for putting this program together. This was one we had to postpone back in the spring when the COVID virus first started, and we appreciate their kindness to reschedule with us. Our first speaker is Dr. Noah Charney, who serves as the executive director of an organization called Radnor to River. He is presently also an associate at Harvard Forest at Harvard University. So he's joining us today, I guess, from Massachusetts. Noah is a Nashville native. He grew up exploring the hills and streams around Warner Park. He's been spearheading this effort to protect the Radnor to River ecological corridor since 2006. His publications include scientific articles on conservation of amphibians, birds, turtles, mammals, and forests, as well as a national award-winning field guide to invertebrate tracking. He holds a PhD in biology and is an impassioned naturalist and conservationist. With Nashville as his model city, his work is reshaping the approach to urban conservation planning by integrating modern ecological theory into the regulatory and nonprofit landscape. Second speaker is Karen Mcintyre, who is presently the librarian at Westmeade Elementary School, where she's spearheaded a successful school composting program that she's hoping to take district-wide. She's the consummate storyteller. She uses folk and fairy tale genres to enhance the learning and wisdom of children and young adults, and maybe today some older adults too. Karen is a California native, but she's been in Nashville for 16 years. She holds a master's in library and information science from the University of North Texas and a master's in education from Eastern New Mexico University, where she focused on reading administration. She has served in both private and public institutions as a teacher and librarian. Her personal commitments to health, wholeness, sustainability are evident in her involvement in food security, school gardening, recycling, and environmental organizations in her community. So I would say welcome to you both. And again, if you have questions, please enter them in the chat box, and we'll try to allow some time at the end, about 20 minutes or so to work through those. So with that, I'll turn it over to Noah.
All right, thanks so much. And can everyone hear me all right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, so yeah, cool. Let me just set this here. And can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. So thanks so much. Yeah, and thanks for the League of Women Voters for hosting this, and everyone who put this together. And Karen, I'm really excited to hear what she has to say at the end after my talk. I'm actually going to start off with a little interactive exercise. And so what we've got here is a picture, and I want you to look at this picture and just it's the same spot, two different pictures within the last year in Bellevue. And I want you to think about what you see there, respond to sort of the ecology, the environment, what stories you can tell from the trees or whatever you see in there. Just respond and see how you feel about it. But in order to do this exercise, I actually need you to go to the website, radnortoriver.org. And because this is going to go, so go into your browser if you could and type that in. I can also, let me tell you. So go over to that website. I should be able to send you a chat link too, but I can't find the chat. And so at the top of that website there, you're going to see this LWV talk image. Click here and just go look at that image for a second. And what I want you to do is to, and I'm going to put the website in here in case, well, it's not showing up, is to actually think about that image. And I'm going to put you into breakout rooms right now and to talk with somebody else. You'll have 2 or 3 other people that, or maybe if nobody shows up in your breakout room, that's okay. You can just think about it for yourself. But so let me just make the breakout rooms, or if you're watching this recorded, that's okay too. But I'm going to give you 2 minutes to just, again, think about that image, think about what you see, think about how you respond to it. Let's see.
Excuse me a minute, Noah. Could I ask everybody to please mute because we're getting some feedback?
Hold on. Okay, yeah. Let me just options into, hold on, phone divider. So think about that image for a second. I'm going to just put you in the breakout rooms and let's see if this actually works. We'll try the technology. All right, so hopefully people can join the rooms, and I'm giving you 2 minutes. And if you're not in a room, we'll just do it anyway. Just think about that picture. Let me figure out Zoom. And this is back to here. So if anyone's just joining, we're looking at this image and taking a minute to just respond to it. Think about what you see in the trees or the forests or on the landscape with the environment, the ecology. Just what do you see going on? What does it tell you? And how do you feel about it?
Radnor River.
All right. I think everybody is back. If you guys could just mute yourselves again. I don't know if that worked or not. It was a technological experiment.
It didn't for us.
All right. Well, so some of us maybe got to work. Some of us didn't. But hopefully you got a second to just at least look at this image for yourself. I don't. And the point is I want to bring everyone to the table and just sort of think about where you're coming from, because folks are going to respond to this in different ways depending on if you're thinking about, if you tend to think about soils or water or trees, or if you work in the construction industry, or if you live in one of these houses up here, or if you live in one of these houses down here, or just what your background is going to inform how you see this. And again, yeah, if everyone could mute yourselves, that would be great. So I'm going to in a second share how, the things I see in these images from my perspective. But before I do, I just want to sort of, again, introduce where I'm from Radnor to River. That's the organization that I'm representing. And it's really based in sort of a science ecological perspective. And we started, 15 years ago working on this with the Westmeade Conservancy, working in the neighborhood of Westmeade, looking at old forests, looking at waterfalls and caves, and trying to protect these particular aspects of the neighborhood And we came to realize that, in order to do this work, we really made more sense to think about the Westmeade in the context of the whole corridor that it's part of, from Radnor Lake up to Warner Parks, through Westmeade, all the way to Bells Bend and Beeman Park, because we can't just protect one piece of it without protecting the whole thing, because the plants and animals all depend on that flow. And it makes sense to sort of think about the whole corridor that exists right now, that supports that ecology. And so we started working with Radnor River to string together pieces of that corridor, getting different components so that they could link together, so that the wildlife could walk from one to the other, which they can now, but so we can protect that corridor. And also, ultimately this idea of having a hiking trail that you could go from Radnor Lake through Warner Parks all the way up to Bells Bend to Beeman Park eventually. So it could be, whether we could ever realize that particular vision of a full trail, it would be awesome, going through the forest across the city the whole time. But it's still just a vision of, like, even if we can get pieces of it, or even if we could secure some of the land, it benefits the wildlife. It gives us something to work towards. And so if we could sort of do something like this in Nashville, it would put us in, in line with other cities that have this sort of well-planned architectural sort of landscape feature of a green corridor that comes into the city. And it would be just sort of a world-class design feature for Nashville to have, and a wonderful example of sort of what you can do with cities. And what we came to feel in sort of working towards this corridor is that we really needed a few more tools in the sort of conservation toolkit of what Nashville has to work on. So one of the things we've been doing is thinking about new policies, new regulations that would help in moving us in this direction. Also, organizing the community of nonprofits, of the agency leaders, of the community members, to bring everyone together so that we have sort of a larger voice, that we speak as one, we have a seat at the table in important decisions, and we can sort of strategically think about what we need to do. And so along those lines, we have on our website, which you should now have open on your browser, hopefully at radnorriver.org, we have the network, a list of sort of all the organizations and agencies in town working towards this mission. And it's a work in progress. I'm sure we're missing some, and so we welcome suggestions. And so bringing the community together, and if you work for one of these organizations, joining the Nashville Conservation Working Group that we're running to sort of strategically think and work together on joint activities. And so, for all of this, it really sort of starts with, for me, an understanding of the system, of the ecology, of the forest itself, or the waters, or whichever piece we're thinking about. I'm a forest ecologist. I do scientific research around forests, so this is the perspective I bring. And so this base, and this is where Karen's work educating the community is so important, because it's the foundation of what we need in order to protect the environment. So if you look at a forest like this looks a lot like the forest I grew up in Westmeade, in my backyard, with these big, tall tulip poplar trees. I'm sure you've seen forests somewhat like this. And if you notice in the understory, we have a different type of tree. These little ones are beech trees. Well, that's actually red maple, I think, but many of them are beech trees. There aren't tulip poplars in the understory. And so when you see something like this, it tells you a very specific and sort of important story about the landscape and what's going on. And what it tells you in this case is that about 100, 150 years ago, this was a field. And it was probably farmed, plowed to keep the trees from growing up. And then one day the farmer stopped plowing her land, and nearby there was some tulip poplars, and they had seeds, and the seeds blew through the wind, their wind dispersed seeds, and they went all over the field, and they grew up in the sun. Tulip poplar loves growing in these big sunny places. And so it grew straight and tall, these tulip poplar trees for 100, 150 years or whatever, and until we had these big tall tulip poplars. But the thing about tulip poplars is they grow great in the sun. They do not grow well in the shade. So when these seeds would fall under their own forest canopy, they wouldn't grow. And so we didn't have tulip poplars coming up underneath. Instead, there was a blue jay who was gathering beech nuts from a neighboring beech tree, and she was burying them all over in the leaf litter in this tulip poplar forest, and she was going to come back and eat them, but she forgot about some of them, and those ones started sprouting. And beech actually grows really well in the shade, and so that's how we end up with beech trees growing under this tulip poplar forest. And what these beech trees are doing is they are waiting for the tulip poplars to get old and die and fall down. That will take a couple hundred years or so till they've reached the end of their lifespan. And then the beech trees will go into the canopy, and beech, they do well in the shade. They also really love the sun. So the beech will be up there, it'll be a beech forest, and then the new beech saplings will come up and still grow under its own beech trees. And this is very simplified. There are more species and it changes in different sites, and this is sort of a cartoon version of it. But basically, if you get to a forest like this, which has these big old beech trees in the canopy, it's pretty clear that it's taken many hundreds of years for this forest to get to this state through several ways of succession of different species. The soil has been developing. And so this is an old growth forest that, when we see this, we really like it. We value it. It's beautiful. It represents the native sort of landscape that should be here in the forest in Nashville. And, other things about these old forests are there are trees that get old and fall over. And when a tree falls over, it picks up the roots and makes this sort of pit. And eventually over time, it'll turn out into this pit next to this mound. And in the pit, you'll get frogs breeding and turtles and snakes, and all these species overwinter in the pit. Up on the mound, there will be certain species of plants that grow up there. So it's important, this is an important structure for the forest. Yeah, again, if anyone doesn't have themselves muted, it would be great to mute yourselves. And so another thing about these old forests is that when the trees fall over, these trees themselves are important structure, right? There's salamanders that live under the logs. There's beetles and woodpeckers and raccoons. All sorts of wildlife depend on the fallen trees in an old forest. And so the structure, the chaos, the jumble of an old forest is just important for supporting the rare and common species and wildlife that we like. Another thing about forests that I value from my perspective is that they have a deep interior. And so, if you have a forest that's far from any edge, it provides a sort of wilderness experience. It also supports the wildlife, because if there's a road cutting through there, it's hard for, say, the salamanders to cross from one part to the other because they get squished by the cars. Also, if you have an edge of a forest, you get sunlight and wind and predators. All these things creep in from the edges that impact the forest up to a couple hundred meters into it. And so these edge forests tend to be sort of ecologically degraded. One way to see that is this overhead view in Westmeade, where there's the native forest is sort of in brown, and up here it's deciduous, but here's a road and these houses, and you can see creeping back into it, there's this green. And that green is actually honeysuckle creeping out into the forest. So invasive species often come in from edges. And the honeysuckle, not only, it changes the plant community, it'll shade out the spring ephemerals like spring beauties and toothworts. It also changes the whole community. Honeysuckle doesn't have many bugs that live on it native. The bugs that live on this honeysuckle, they left back in Asia. So native things like spicebush or other shrubs would support more bugs. And maybe you think, well, bugs, who cares about bugs? Well, there was a study recently in DC looking at chickadees in neighborhoods that had lots of native plants and neighborhoods that had lots of non-native plants. And the chickadees in the neighborhoods with very many non-native plants, the babies were all dying. They were starving to death because the mamas couldn't find enough bugs on the invasive plants to feed to the babies. And so when you have these non-natives, it sort of upsets the whole ecosystem and has these trickle-down sort of effects. So if we look at a landscape that's fragmented like this, where the dark green is forest, and these are sort of housing developments, what I see is fragments where There's lots of edges for all these edge effects to creep in. It's hard for wildlife to get from one to the other, from one of these little isolated chunks back and forth. But if we had the same number of units, we could leave the forest like one of these scenarios where there's deep interior forest, there's a wilderness area, there's potential for salamanders to walk back and forth, and for having a hiking trail, like a real recreational through trail there. So, you know, this is what one of the things we're really stressing is how you can sort of have the same forest configured in a different way, and it makes a big difference. And that's, I think, really important from a planning perspective. And sort of part of the whole point of this, you know, what we're trying to bring is to look beyond just seeing individual trees, but to understand the whole system, and both spatially and sort of over time, how the forest is something that is more than just a few, you know, different trees that are planted here and there. It's a whole functioning system. So back to this original image, which hopefully at least some of you got a chance to look at and think about a little bit. So again, what you see in this, you know, is going to depend on where you come from. And what I see is over here, this is smooth bark, leaves on in winter. This is a beech tree, and it's a big, tall beech tree. It's straight, which means it doesn't have these lower branches. So it grew up in a forest. It didn't grow up in an open field. And this tree would have been in the canopy. And so this is a beech this is a beech in the forest. The canopy tells me that this was an old forest that's taken hundreds of years to develop. And so that's one thing I see there. Another thing is that if you look, this is the area that was impacted here from the aerial. Now you'll notice that, you know, we've cut into this old forest, and there's going to be all these edge effects that are going to be creeping in and over into the neighboring properties. Not even, you know, so we're going to be impacting this forest over here. It's not even the same owner. And so that seems unfortunate from the forest perspective. Though I also see over down here this deep forest interior, and which is really sort of a big expansive forest compared to, say, these neighborhoods that are fragmented or these little chunks up here. And so, you know, there's part of me that's really seeing that this is next to this development. So it's maybe not great that we've cut down all this forest and have this new development, but it's also sort of a very efficient packing of where we put the houses. So let me break this down in a different way, the way I would do it in sort of a science paper. It's the same landscape here. Here we've got dark green is the interior forest, and the light sea green is the edge forest. White is where there's no forest. And this sort of middle green is kind of, it's an interior forest, but it's not as deep as this one. So this is in the initial forest, and maybe I would have preferred that they just don't build any more houses in this forest. And I think some folks would agree with that. But, you know, we don't have complete fiat over landowners and what's happening. And so they were going to build, and they're in the process of this, deciding where they're going to build. There were a couple different scenarios that came on the table at different points. One of which was this one, I'm calling scenario 1, where the new footprint would be right here. And the other one is scenario 2. And this is the one that we actually saw in that photo. This is the one that actually came to life. And so let's just look at the numbers here. The development footprint, the red area, is, you know, about the same, maybe a little bit bigger on scenario 2, about 11 to 13 acres. The direct forest loss, so the loss of canopy, closed canopy forest, is somewhat similar. Both scenario 1 and 2 are about 9 or 10 acres of forest loss. But when we look at the change in the amount of interior forest left over, you can look at either the dark green or the medium shade green. Both tell a very similar story. In this one, we lose about 15 acres of interior forest. In this one, we lose about 40 acres of interior forest. So even though they're both about the same size, the development may not be a big difference from a developer's perspective. From an ecological forest perspective, it's a huge difference. And now, you know, I got an email this morning from someone who actually lives in this neighborhood who maybe would have preferred this scenario here because it's further from her houses, and that's a totally valid perspective. I guess I would just point out that, you know, in this scenario that we ended up with, we have this whole big area, which can be part of a 200-acre park. Eventually, we're hoping to have there with hiking trails and a wilderness experience and all, and sort of supporting the wildlife right next to this neighborhood that just would not be possible if we cut the thing in half. So what we're trying to do with Radnor to River is sort of bring this sort of type of thinking to the table for every decision, have folks be involved and educated about the landscape, use things like the Metro Parcel Mapper. If you haven't seen it, it's the planning department runs this website that you can look at parcels and put on different layers, the National Next Map, the topography, and all these different things, and just look at the forest and see what's going on. We're creating this map. We have this map of the forests and the invasive species in Nashville that we use with satellites to detect them. And this, I think we would like to include on the, in the planning process, these sorts of layers. And one of the things, if anyone is a naturalist or wants to go out in the forest and help out, we're really looking to recruit people to go out and help us validate that and work and build on that invasive species map. So through iNaturalist, you can go out and actually map invasive species. And again, that's on our website. We have a lot of resources that we put there, maps and just ideas that through our annual reports. And so just go and take a look and see if you want to join that. So again, so what we're working on is sort of ultimately having better policy for Nashville, organizing the community conservation organizations to bring the sort of perspective of the landscape and the forest to the table. And it really, ultimately will, if we can do this, Nashville will become sort of a forward, sort of progressive voice of like how we could think really well about the conservation in the future of the planning of Nashville. And so we would just be a model for conservation planning for cities around the world if we can really do this well. And it all starts with education, right? That's the foundation, just understanding what we have, educating community members, policy members, policymakers, landowners, everyone. And this is where I'm going to turn it over to Karen, because this is the piece that sort of her foundation is just making sure we are all aware of what we have. So thank you. I'm going to just pass it over to Karen now. How do we do that?
Okay.
Okay, all right. That was sudden. So I'm going to try to go pretty quickly. And I think we're going to start with Tracy, if you wouldn't mind showing that video first, and then I'll jump in and do my presentation and see if I can compete with Noah. I don't think I can compete with Noah. I'm just a child ecologist. I'm not a tree ecologist, but in fact, I think Noah was a little nervous because I might show you some pictures of when he was a little boy, because we use a book that has him featured in it, and you'll see that too. But Tracy, if you go ahead and show that film, that'd be great.
Noah, can you make me a host again?
Wait, what do I need to do that? Let's see. Okay. Does that work?
Yes, that worked. Thank you.
Okay. The reason I asked Tracy to show the video is because I'm nervous about doing it myself. I'm just a big chicken heart. I'm not bold like Noah and willing to try things. But maybe I should go ahead. What do you think, Tracy? Oh, yay. Here it comes.
You got it.
Hi, this is Anna, and I'm the Compost and Recycling Education Coordinator at Tennessee Environmental Council. And today we're at Westmeade Elementary School because they have an amazing composting program where they're composting at their lunch period. And we're gonna go in and take a look.
My name is Stephen Brees, and I'm the principal at Westmeade Elementary School, and have been here for 15 years. Composting came into effect here at Westmeade. We began with a focus on recycling. Several years ago, we brought in recycling, started with that area. We broadened that into our garden use and brought in gardens. From that, one of the things we started to notice was the amount of waste we were seeing in our cafeteria. And so that brought along the idea to try to bring in food composting here at the building. And that was an idea we started 2 years ago, started exploring the idea. We were able to get funding last year, and we brought it in. We did a pilot for it, and then we launched it at the end of last year and saw the students had an incredible reaction to it, really enjoyed it. Getting a new building and having a building that would be a zero footprint building, it would take a lot of training on the part of our children because we're not taught as a society to be a zero waste society. So the part of throwing paper towels away and overusing paper towels and things like that, that would be a large training project that would have to take place amongst our students and amongst our staff and our community in general that use the facility.
I'm Karen Mcintyre, and I'm the librarian, or as they say nowadays, media specialist. We started over a decade ago with a garden right away that the children didn't know that food came from a garden. We started teaching them about food and making better choices. In the past 2 years, we've diverted 8,000 pounds of untouched food, mostly to the mission downtown. Now the Society of St. Andrew picks up for us. But then the last piece of that is the compost. And we'd already tried composting in our little compost bin and learned quickly that 100 pounds of compost a day just isn't going to be something we could manage. We'll be able to explain to Metro that if we compost and we recycle and we redirect the good food and we take the things that the teachers ordinarily throw in the trash that are perfectly good, if we do all of that, the actual amount of trash that they have to take to the landfill will be so much reduced that it should equal out the cost. So if we work out all kinks, then it would be easily replicable throughout the district.
If we don't have a planet that we can live on, there's nothing else we can do about it. Captain that tells us what to do, and so we turn over our trays and put our food into the correct bins, like the compost and recycling, and then we put our trays in a stack.
Hi, I'm Diane Scher. Support the kids in separating their trash from composting material for food. Karen Mcintyre has an amazing program here. It's so progressive, it's so amazing that she's trying to go to a zero footprint school. So I heard that she needed help and I volunteered. Yeah, first of all, what impressed me so much is the kids want to do it. How engaged they are. Some of them, a few of them practically push me over. It's also impressive and dismaying a little bit of how much food is wasted that you can't save. But the food that they put aside and reuse, the other kids know they can come up and get it if they want it. And that's a really good way to save some of the food. And yes, I think we can do this throughout all our schools.
If you figure out all the kids and the people who work for the district and the other workers that are auxiliary, there have got to be at least 30,000 people in this. So if you had 30,000 people who were doing this, it's going to make a big impact. Our ultimate goal is to build a zero footprint or a net zero building for our school. What I see with the children is that these are habits they're developing. They're not going to have to break any horrible habits that, I've had to work at breaking. They're going to come up with the right habit, that if we were to build a net zero building, there would be people who would fund it and who would be eager enough to see this in place as a model for what we can do, that we would find the funding outside of Metro. First step would be to get the blessing of the school district, which we've taken the first tentative steps to do that. And then the next step would be to have the full-throated education program to make people aware of what we're doing. So many people don't know that we've been doing this for a decade, to make them aware that we're doing it and then allow them to participate by contributing.
Okay, so that's where we ended. You're going to have to give me, okay, all right, now it's okay. Let me try. All right, so we didn't get here overnight, folks. And it was really hard work to get here. But what I want you to leave here with is the concept that the public school can be a major part of changing the atmosphere and the the whole attitude toward recycling and repurposing and toward climate change in our community, because those children are like little vectors of infection when they go home, trust me. So how did we get to this point? Well, about 2008, the teacher who taught PE at the time came to me and wanted to do a school garden. She said, a lot of our kids live in food deserts, and so we need to teach them how to grow their own food and how to enjoy healthy, good food, because they eat such horrible food. So about that same time, Last Child in the Woods came out, and I read that. And that started to form my opinions about where we should go with this. And Bringing Nature Home by Douglas Tallamy was published, and I was already interested in this. So I read that book, and he talks about natives and explained for the first time. I thought, what difference does it make whether you got a Oriental bush honeysuckle or a honeysuckle from Tennessee? What's the deal? They're both plants. You know, a plant's a plant, right? That's embarrassing to admit that I was that ignorant. But he does a good job of explaining why that's true, that we can't have invasive species if we want to continue to support our wildlife. And then last year he published the book about, I didn't mean to click, sorry, the book about Nature's Best Hope. And that brings it full circle to the idea that each of us has to take responsibility and create a natural environment in our yards and backyards, and our large spaces like schoolyards need to be created for nature instead of just having lawns, which are food deserts for animals. So also at that time, studies started to show the impact of green education and how it was helping kids. And Kids' Outdoor Bill of Rights started to show up in different states around the country. And I started seeing that and thinking, well, that's crazy. Of course, kids can climb trees and catch fish, but you know, today with our kids, not so much. They don't even know what to do when they get to a park, generally speaking. So outdoor education begins to pop up in the literature everywhere. And then 2009, Mayor Dean instituted the Green Ribbon Committee, and our Civic Center won the Green Building Award from the Green Building Council. And that was really amazing to me. I'd never seen anything like that, where you plant on top of a rooftop. What a concept. So these things were filtering around in Nashville already in 2009. And then a confluence of local events started to occur. The Livable Nashville report came out, and I read that, and I thought, well, a lot of what we're doing with the gardens fits right in with that. And then realizing large corporations began to change their model. I mean, I used to go in and never find a piece of organic food in Kroger. And when I brought up getting local food in Kroger, the guy just looked at me like I was crazy. But suddenly those things were happening. And Kroger started their Zero Hunger, Zero Waste program in 2017, which was a huge step. And then last year, Nashville passed the Zero Waste Initiative for 2050 to be zero waste by then. And there was just a general increasing of awareness, and all of that was coming together to help bring about where we are right now in our program. So in 2017, the World Wildlife Fund advertised this food waste audit, and they wanted people to participate. So I, of course, signed right up, and I didn't know what I was getting into. Running a food waste audit by myself singly in the cafeteria turned out to be quite a chore. But what happened from that? It wasn't a good food audit. I would be embarrassed if Noah saw it, because it doesn't fit any of the standards of scientific inquiry. But what the kids saw was, at the end of the week, they piled up all of the uneaten food that was untouched, you know, apples and oranges and crackers and cheese and all those things on the stage. And so by the end of the week, there was this huge pile, and the fourth graders came to me and asked, why can't we just give that to the homeless? Indeed, why not? So we wrote to the head of food services in Metro, and Spencer Taylor said, well, you can create share tables at your school. Nobody's doing it, he said, but you can. So we contacted Home Depot and asked if they had a refrigerator they'd give us, because of course the cafeteria ladies were most distressed that I was keeping this food all day long and then taking it to the mission. It needed to be refrigerated. So rather than to fight a battle over it, I just sent out a plea for a refrigerator, and Home Depot showed up with a beautiful brand spanking new one. And the kids started putting the food in the refrigerator at the conclusion of their lunch period. So Kroger had placed this really handy dandy infographic generating piece on their website, where you could put in the amount of food you had rescued, and it would generate a a really nice graphic. But in the first year, we saved 4,000 pounds of food, and 3,200 meals were rescued, and 625 pounds of carbon was sequestered. So in 2.5 years, it was 10,000 pounds of food. And that was just the food that was untouched that went basically to the mission downtown. By the way, the guys love strawberry milk. Urban Green Lab then in 2019 wanted to do a food waste audit and asked us if we'd like to participate because they knew what we'd been doing. I'd asked them for help several times. They technically couldn't help me because I'm in elementary school and they were doing middle and high, but they knew we were doing this. So there were 3 schools that were participating in Nashville. There were 8 cities around the country that were participating, and Urban Green Lab was doing this for Nashville. And so we were one of 3 schools that participated. You can see how much better they did collecting the food waste. This is Mina Johnson. She was our representative at the time, and now she's on the Planning Commission. That's great. I think she's a good person. She would hook up with Noah's ideas right away. And this is, of course, your friend Tina. You recognize her. She always helps me out. And we had 120 pounds average waste of food every day, and 1.5 swimming pools, that stunned me, of water every day that we wasted. It was quite shocking. And we learned also that $5 million every day is wasted in uneaten food for cafeterias around the country. Huge problem. But what happened at this time was the group that planned this huge audit was mostly major hitters that I knew not of. I knew none of these people except for I knew Mayor Schulman, Vice Mayor Schulman, and I knew Charlie Tigard because of the Bell Garden, but the rest of them I didn't know. There was the Tennessee Environmental Council was represented. Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation was represented. The Urban Green Lab, Society of St. Andrew, all of these organizations participated in this. And when we met to do the final look at what we had accomplished and how it had worked, I said, I don't see how I can ask my children to go back to throwing their food away. Isn't there some way that we could keep composting? And so Vice Mayor Schulman and Charlie Tigard went to the foundation, Kroger Foundation, and asked if they could take the rest of that money, there was a little bit left, and give it to Westmeade to compost, and they said yes. So we finished out the year composting. Then the next year I raised the funds, and it was astounding to me how people showed up, not only to contribute money, because they did. The Sierra Club had a matching grant of $1,000. One individually contributed $1,000, and I can guarantee you they're not wealthy. But these people are so committed to helping our community make this step to sustainability that they participated in this way. And so we were able to compost the following year. These are all the organizations that helped out. And what I realized in the course of this was we are it, tag, we are it. I used to think there would be large national solutions, but national solutions are being dismantled every day. And so we really are going to have to be the ones that make these choices on the local level and push these solutions out, as I guess Noah would probably agree with that. So we started with just the garden, but it didn't take very long to realize that the garden wasn't about just growing food. It was about all the creatures we saw in the garden and all the science that we could do surrounding that garden. And we began to see the value was much larger than just planting and harvesting. These are kindergartners, and I love this picture because you can see how engaged they are. The little guy up in the red shirt is actually watching a bug. He's showing it to his friend there, but they're totally engaged in everything. And we also learned that anything that they grow, they'll eat. I've seen kids actually eat raw kale right out of the beds, and they'll eat the snap peas before they're washed. When we first started, they didn't even understand that the garden was where food came from, and they thought it was disgusting because it came from the ground. And now they love it, and they just participate in every way. So one of our kids had been in this program, and when he got to his Eagle Scout badge, he said, would you like some more beds? So the Eagle Scouts made 3 more beds, and they also delineated our pollinator garden, took out the privet, and planted native berries here, which of course a huge improvement. The Girl Scouts weren't to be topped, so they started a project to create a greenhouse out of bottles that took them 2 years to gather all the bottles, and they created a bottle greenhouse for us. And this had its problems, and we finally took it down this year. It's made of plastic bottles, and in the sun, the plastic becomes brittle and it breaks, and so it's not really feasible. But the point is, the garden teaches you all the time. I love, Thomas Jefferson said when he was 80 years old, he said, "I'm an old man, but a young gardener." And what he meant was the garden was always teaching him lessons. And I feel that way too. The kids saw potential, and when they were going outside and seeing all these creatures as well as the plants, they wanted to become a wildlife habitat. So the third grade teacher oversaw that, and the kids did all the work, mapped the campus, and filed the paperwork, and we were declared a wildlife habitat. But the value of that is far beyond just all of this. This little boy here that you can't see his face, there's a reason for that, is a perfect example of what happens when kids are outdoors. He came to kindergarten throwing the chairs at his teacher and swearing like a sailor, and he loved the garden. So every day, if he was good that day, if he managed to get through the day without throwing any chairs, he got to go out in the garden with me. And the rule was he had to follow my instructions perfectly if he was going to be in the garden. And he did. He was a changed child when he was outside in nature. Nature just heals us. What taught me the most were the butterflies. I was out pulling weeds one day in the garden, and these butterflies were all around me, and I took pictures of them. I'd never seen a buckeye butterfly before, and I was so excited. I went inside to identify. I thought, well, the kids will enjoy seeing the butterflies, but I should show them, the chrysalis and the egg. And so I was busily doing this when I learned that this particular butterfly, the buckeye butterfly, is dependent on the one thing I was pulling out of the garden. I'd been planting pretty plants that had lots of flowers for the butterflies. And what I didn't understand was that the butterflies, yeah, they can take nectar from anything, but they must lay their eggs on particular plants. So here I'd been weeding out the very thing that butterfly needed. And so it started to change my idea about what plants were or what weeds were. And I wasn't any longer planting for butterflies. I was now planting for caterpillars and bugs. So I was out, and a Gulf flitterary was there. And I thought, oh my, that's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. It has white underneath it. And I learned that it had to have passion flower vine nearby. And I don't know anything about these plants. And I went out hunting, and sure enough, thank goodness I found it. And we brought the plant in, we brought the fruit in, and we cut it open, and the kids ate it. It was just remarkable. That's when I called the Westmeade Conservancy back. They had given me this book. This is the book that Noah was a little boy in. And I had used it for 2 years in the classroom. I realized I needed to go outside with the kids, but I didn't know enough to do it. So I explained that to them, hoping they would send somebody to do it for me. And what they did was they sent a botanist to identify the plants and help me learn the plants so that I could do it. So that was another contribution, and it made a difference in how we viewed things. I started planting more natives, and they aren't necessarily as pretty. They don't look as manicured, but they're what we need in our gardens. And I started having other connections. That the Cumberland River Compact gave us this cistern and built it. But they also showed us how to plant a rain garden. I no longer have that because Metro's mowed it down, but we're working on that. I've got good news at the end of my presentation for you on that score. And I started planting things that really were planted more to see the full circle of life. I planted cabbage, not because kids like cabbage, but for the cabbage moths. And one day we had been out hunting, during summer reading, we'd been out and we were hunting fossils, and it was a hot day, and we came back and had a picnic in the garden. And I was sitting there looking at the area next to the building, and I saw the thistle, and I thought, man, I got to get over there and get that weeded out. Look, it's going to seed. And just then 3 American goldfinch flew in and started eating thistle seeds. And I thought, what's wrong with this picture? I'm paying $40 a gallon for Niger, and here it is growing free in my garden. So I began to change. Now, not everybody comes along with you. You know, my changes were not necessarily things that the people in the building understood. And you got to realize that, because I've struggled with some of that. But I want you to meet some of the people that helped us along the way. This is Hank Delvin, one of the first organic farmers in the area, and he donated all of the soil from my 5 beds and has given me advice. This is Colleen Whitfer, and she has, her backyard is actually just like a natural history museum of native plants. And so she gives me advice and helps me plant natives in my garden. This is one of my favorite people, Huntsville Honegger, and he really is, he's death on invasive species, particularly bush honeysuckle, and single-handedly probably has saved that the Bell property over there where the cave is, and he's had a crew of goats in eating down the invasives, and then he had crews come in planting natives. And these are all people that do this for free, for love of nature. This is the Joneses, Sam and Nancy. And at church one night, I was sitting talking about how much the kids were enjoying being outdoors with me that day. And Sam said, "Hey, would you like to fledge bluebirds?" And I said, "What? I didn't know you could do that." So he came and he taught us how to fledge bluebirds, and the kids built bluebird boxes. And there's nothing, I mean, bluebirds are amazing because they'll let the kids get right up next to them. They recognize them. We have some rules about how we behave, and we put the mealworms down, and they come right down 6 feet away from the kids and pick up those mealworms and eat them and take them up to their babies. But there's nothing that I can describe what it feels like to see a little kid for the first time. You open the bird box and they see the hatchlings. It's just remarkable. So we're encouraging children to love nature, because in truth, you can't protect what you don't love. And in 2016, we added the Young Naturalist program with Warner Parks. They provide the money for our field trips, and we go 3 times a year, every class, to the parks to see seasonal changes. And the kids record their observations and they talk about them, and the teachers come back exhausted and the kids come back dirty, and it's wonderful. And we really are treating nature deficit disorder now. I didn't realize that, but that's what we're doing. And the proof of that was last summer, I got a letter from this little boy's mom, Sam is his name. And she said, "You have ruined," she has 2 boys. She says, "You have ruined my children." And so I thought, oh no. She said, "We have to find," they find the wildflowers. "We have to stop and look at all the wildflowers." So here Sam is, and here's the wildflowers he found on their hike. And she said, "Sam is lying on a rock in the middle of a stream. I have never seen Sam lie still for 15 minutes on his own intentionally, but he did." And she said, "When I come home from hiking, my backpack is full of trash because those children pick up every piece of trash they find on their hike." And so I felt like if that one child is that successful, then what we're doing has been a success. But
Amen.
What we're teaching, really, the world becomes what we teach. We know that. So if we're teaching sustainability and environmental responsibility and love of nature, then the world will reflect that. So when COVID hit and we had to stop all of our activities, some of us started meeting and said, how are we going to move this to the next step to get metro schools to do this? So we wrote a 5-step plan, which we proposed to Metro several weeks ago. And this is what it is. And I will tell you now that I got a call from Hank Clay, who's second in command to Dr. Battles, the day before yesterday, and they are eager to do this. So first we have to create a committee of environmentalists and members of our MNPS and also the city to get together and create a plan. And we're sort of basing this plan on what they did in Austin, Texas, which is a mirror city to us. It's almost the same as we are in terms of demographics and all kinds of things, size, all of those things. So they started this way and creating this committee, and then they'll lay out the first steps, the first plan. And we'll establish, we want the city right now, we're gonna take this to the city and have them establish our own Nashville Children's Bill of Rights with our own things that are in that. Noah could probably contribute some of the things that should go in that. And to continue to expand the food rescue that Metro is doing from schools. It's just beginning to move out into other schools where they're rescuing the food and having shared tables and then sharing it with the community. And to support the continued composting at Westmeade with the intent of expanding that in our area to other schools that will demonstrate how appropriate it is, and not only how appropriate it is, but how inexpensive it will be compared to landfilling all of that. And then finally, to maintain and encourage the existing network of all these people that are in the schools now doing this for love of nature and hope for the future. So that I'm going to end with that, and then that'll give you a chance, I hope, to ask some good questions.
Hey, but before we, thanks to both of you, both very interesting presentations, and I certainly learned some new things. Before we take questions, it is almost 1 o'clock, and we usually try to stop at 1 o'clock. And so if people need to leave, and that could include our presenters, I'm not sure about your schedule, Noah, especially you're an hour ahead of us, I think. But anyway, can both of you take some questions if we have them?
Yeah, I got plenty of time.
Okay, good. All right. And if anybody else feels like they need to leave because of work or whatever, please feel free to do that. We've not really received a lot of questions, I think, on the chat. We have received several compliments, I guess, for your work and what you're doing. I guess I have a question. Well, here is a question for Karen of what do you now need from us? What could we do to help? So maybe you could address that.
Yeah, I think right now, if you'll keep your eyes open and just be really supportive of this, it's going to go to the City Council next, and so that I can't imagine that proposal is doesn't cost hardly anything. So, you know, I can't imagine that they'll turn it down, but we need to be talking about it. We need to help spread that educational piece. I certainly can see a connection and a tie to what Noah is trying to do with Radnor to River. And we just need to begin to encourage further understanding. I think most people just don't know stuff. When Tanya Harding proposed the idling ordinance, people laughed at it and said that's crazy. And it isn't crazy. It's a great idea, and lots of places have it. But you have to prepare the earth. You have to have that beginning change of ideas about what's important and what really is happening. So spread the word and stay in touch, and when it comes up, just support it. Noah, what would you say? What would you ask for?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the same things, which is just sort of, yeah, being ready when things come up to support them, and just working. I mean, there's all different ways to connect with your work and to connect on some of the volunteer efforts. And if anyone's in any of these organizations, to just participate and help brainstorm, help move some of this forward through the levels of educating and organizing and getting new policy. So just get involved, just get on and start, just be in touch. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw things. I didn't realize that. I always go to the Westmeade Conservancy side, and I didn't realize that this other side existed, Noah. So I can see things there that I need to read and know about and encourage as well. So.
Yeah, and I just put that, I meant to put that at the beginning when we did that exercise. I couldn't find the chat window, but I just put the website there again. So now you can go look at it. So if you know when got there.
Thank you. We've got, I guess, a comment from Councilwoman Angie Anderson, who is on, who said she's working on another tree bill to address what you've been discussing today. Also, thanks, Karen McIntyre, for your work, and Councilwoman Tanya Hancock is also looking forward to working with you. Someone has also said they have more natives to share with anyone who wants them. Colleen Whitford. If anybody wants those. I guess I have a question for both of you, and that is, what would you say are the biggest barriers to being able to expand your programs or being able to implement what you want to implement?
Well, I'll go first because I'm not shy. It's ignorance. It's basic ignorance. And I think that we can help. That's why I say the school district is where we need to start, because if we can educate the kids, they will carry this home and they will change their parents' attitudes. And it's crucial. We don't have much time. So this is really critical that we do this and move forward. So I would say, I'm always, when I go to a place and I'm going to get a drink and they try to hand me a plastic straw, I say, oh no, I have my own straw. You know why I have my own straw? My husband always rolls his eyes because, oh no, here she goes again. But if we don't do that, if we don't help people know, they won't know. And a lot of people just aren't connected enough to know any of this stuff. So ignorance is the biggest hurdle. I think once people understand, they pretty much are on board.
Yeah, I guess I might put it a little more delicately, but yeah, essentially, yeah, not understanding the systems that we're working with. So at the policy level, like with that development, like not understanding the difference of where you put something, that it makes a difference, and just having the voice at the table and having everyone understand the basic ways that the ecology functions, and just I think that education is the basic problem, is people just aren't aware of like the difference between cutting down these trees versus these, and they see them all as the same. And so I think so institutionalizing the kind of information that perspective brings, so in a way that's sort of always there, I think is sort of the thing that I would be looking to do.
Right, I started out, Noah, thinking that my goal was just to institutionalize my little program at Westmeade.
Yeah.
And look where it's wound up, because it isn't really just my little program at Westmeade that needs to be institutionalized. I mean, if I died tomorrow, the program would be dead. So all of these things need to be institutionalized.
Yeah.
And I want to emphasize that I'm ignorant too, because Lord knows I didn't know any of this stuff 10 years ago. And I was just, I had to fight the fight this summer with people at school who are new to the building and don't know. And they said, well, those plants out there in the pollinator garden are too tall and they don't look pretty. They're not manicured. Well, okay, so these people view a garden as somebody comes in each season and pulls up all the plants and puts new pretty plants and mulches around them. That's how they think a garden is. So that's a huge education piece. It's not their fault that they think that. I didn't take it personally. Well, I did take it personally because I've been working so hard, but really, I didn't take it personally because I understood where it came from. It came from a basic lack of knowledge. So we got to do better about helping people understand. Maybe your yard is starting to look a little ragged and your homeowners association is approaching you about that, which has happened to me on numerous occasions. So do a little education project with your homeowners association to get them to understand why your yard looks a little ragged and how important that is,
I'd like to make a comment. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
So I have been volunteering with Root Nashville for a citywide tree planting for the last, I think, since July. And I put a note in the chat, but basically if some council districts, each resident could get 3 free trees through this planting, and the trees are 8 feet high and 1.5-inch caliper natives. And not only do you get it, but they will plant it for you, and they'll call whatever company it is where you have to make sure it's not hitting the lines. So that they're doing another effort in October. So some of the lower income areas can get trees for free. And in like the area I'm in, people could buy trees for $150 each planted. And so it's quite a good deal. And I guess this is pertinent to what Noah has talked about, is that we really have a lot of resources here for trees and forests.
Okay. All right, I think we're kind of run out of time, and but we have really enjoyed both of our presenters today and learned a lot of good information. There's been a good bit of information popping up in the chat boxes, so I don't know if everybody has been able to see those. If you don't know how to do that, click the chat down at the bottom of your screen, and maybe we could leave those up for just a little bit, because there were some email contacts and different information about non-native plants and such. So anyway, with that, I'd just love to thank everybody for being here. Hope you'll join us again in October for our program on affordable housing. So thanks, Noah. Thanks, Karen. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Noah and Kara. This was wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, lots of compliments are out there.
I'm going to the chat box now.
Okay.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Hey.
Noah, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah.
I got a question for you.
Okay.
I have a box turtle in my backyard, and he's trapped there, you know, because we have fencing, and I know box turtles are very territorial, so I hesitate to move him out. And I was thinking, because I just recently realized how